Hi all, so welcome to the video lecture on the Chapter 12 PowerPoint, which is on organizing your speech. So we're going to talk about how to approach organizing a speech and developing a speech and writing it to kind of give you some background on that and some strategies. This is an elaboration of the Speech Basics presentation as well. So the general process is that you're going to start with your body, then you're going to develop your introduction, and then from there, you're going to develop your conclusion. I know this sounds backwards. Normally people want to start with the introduction and then move to the body and then do the conclusion, but it's actually not the most efficient or the best way to write, because most of the information that you'll need for your introduction, you'll actually get when you're creating your body, and pretty much everything in the conclusion is based on the body. So by starting with the body, you save yourself a lot of time and effort. So and as I said, I know it sounds backwards, but it is a good idea. In both speeches and essays, actually, I tell my composition students to do the same thing, because it helps you get a stronger idea of the main ideas that you want to say. You can adjust your organization early on, and you can customize the introduction and conclusion based on the content in your body. And all of that saves you time because you start with what you know that you want to say. I do occasionally do presentations on Skillshare, and I have one entitled How to Write an Essay in 30 Minutes. And the way that it works is you start with the body. And by starting with the body, you save yourself from sitting there and, staring at a blank screen and going, okay, well, what's a good attention getter? Worry about the attention getter once you've got the body on the page. Normally, you'll find your attention getter in the process of writing the body. You'll find an image that stands out to you or a statistic, and you'll go, well, that's a powerful image, but I think it's actually strong enough that I should put it at the beginning. So it makes a lot more sense to start with the body than it does to start with the introduction. So what are some steps for developing the body? You will first want to identify the main points that you have in your body. Normally this is going to be about 2 to 4 main points. In longer speeches, it's probably going to be closer to 4. In shorter speeches, it might be closer to 2. Then you're going to kind of select your wording for the main points and make sure they relate to the main topic. This doesn't mean that you need to have everything completely written out, but at least kind of get an idea of your topic sentences and subpoints for the topic sentence. The book recommends next choosing an organizational pattern. The organizational pattern is going to pretty much be based on the type of speech that you do. So if you're doing a demonstrative speech, a how-to speech, it's going to be based on the steps. And more than likely, your first part's going to be what preparation steps, the second part's going to be the process itself, and the third part's going to be finishing, or something like that. If you're doing a narrative speech, which is a story, then you're going to be doing the body in chronological order. You might start with some background information or what happened first, and then lead up to the main events of the story in the body, and then talk about why it matters, or in the second one, and then talk about why it matters in the third body paragraph. If you're in an informative speech, then you're going to probably select 3 main ideas, 3 things about that topic that the reader needs to know or the audience needs to know. Then you create a thesis statement. I would actually create the thesis statement before nailing down the organizational pattern, because often the thesis statement will help you figure out the organizational pattern. But you can also do the organizational pattern first and then use your thesis statement to kind of give the audience a preview of that organizational pattern. So you can switch these if you want, or you can do them in that order. That part's up to you. Then you're going to outline the main parts of the body. And then from there, kind of develop the main points, add more detail to them. And after that, you'll add in the transition. So words to kind of help the reader or the audience. You can tell I teach a lot of composition, the audience to anticipate what's coming next. And this is especially important in speeches because unlike in writing, they can't see it on this page, so they can't see where the paragraph break is. And a paragraph is a thought, right? A paragraph is a unit of an idea. But if the audience can't see where the ideas are shifting, then they kind of need your help to be able to get a better sense of when you're moving from one idea to the next. So in this set of steps, we basically want to get our ideas on the page, get them organized, and kind of get the body of the speech to a semi-final form. If for identifying the main points, you'll choose 2 to 4 main points that support your goal for a speech. So in an informative speech, this is going to be 2 to 4 categories of information. If you're telling your audience how to do something, it might be 2 to 4 steps. If you're telling a story, it might be 2 to 4 most important events in the story. In this class, I really wouldn't expect you to use fewer than 2 or more than 4 main points or body paragraphs. Maybe in the informative and persuasive late in the semester, but even then, you probably should be able to do it in 3 paragraphs. So let's use an example. So let's say that I was giving a speech on Bengal cats to a local group interested in banning hybrid cats. So Bengals, if you don't know, Bengal cats are a breed of cat that was derived from the Asian leopard cat, which is a wild cat out in Asia. It lives in most of the Asian continent from Siberia down to Borneo. In the, I think, 1960s, someone came up with the idea of breeding this with domestic cats to create a hybrid to reduce the number of cats that were being poached, wild cats in Asia that were being poached for their coats. Over time, over the last 70 years, or 60 years, the breed has become pretty much entirely domestic. Most Bengals are 10 to 15 generations away from the wild. But still a lot of people think that because they were derived from that wild cat, they are still wild, and so a lot of states still try to ban them. So now that you have some context on this, my goal statement might be, I want to convince my audience that Bengals are mostly domesticated and safe to have as pets. And I will use this example throughout the presentation to show you how to develop a speech. And a fun fact, everything in the example speech is true. I actually bred Bengals for almost 20 years. My family did it when I was a kid, and then my ex-husband took over the business. I don't do it anymore, but it was a very interesting time in my life. So for this example with Bengal cats, my main points might be that most Bengals are at least 10 generations removed from any wild blood. Legislation has changed in recent decades in other states and communities to allow them to be classified as domestic pets rather than wild cats. And then I might also include some anecdotal evidence that they are good pets by talking about experiences that breeders and pet owners have had. This is a Bengal, by the way. Yes, I forgot I put that note in there. That's a Bengal cat. You can probably see why people think they're wild, even if they are actually domestic, because they look like they're wild. They're bred to look like they're wild. Where did my thing go? Okay, let's move back. So then you're going to word your main points. So in the next step, or in the last step, you'll probably basically have a bulleted list. And now you'll take those list items and write them out as sentences. So you want to make sure that all the points support your goal statement and relate back to the main topic. This is really important. The audience needs to know how everything is tied together, otherwise they think you're rambling and they get lost. And you want to make sure that all the points are parallel or follow the same sentence structure. That's something you can tackle in revision in editing, but it definitely does help to make your speech seem more polished and refined if you use the same sorts of sentence patterns throughout. And if you've taken 101, this is basically the same thing as writing topic sentences. So you want to make sure that your topic sentences for each of your paragraphs follow the same format and relate back to the main point. So back to the Bengal cat example. So I might rephrase my main points as follows. Although Bengals were originally derived from the Asian leopard cats, most Bengals sold today are at least 10 generations removed from any wild blood. Then my next main point, my topic sentence, might be many states originally included Bengals in their legislation against owning wild animals, but over the past couple decades that has changed. And my third one would be Bengals are safe pets that are trusted with family members of all ages because they are generally more sensitive to the family's needs than other cats. These aren't truly parallel, but they're very close. The first two start with a dependent clause and then end with an independent clause, and then this one's an independent clause followed by a dependent clause. You don't need to be that nitpicky with it, but they should all the sentences topic sentences should roughly sound similar is really all that means. So choose an organizational pattern. Often the most effective pattern will be evident in the prompt or the purpose. We talked a little bit about this before. In an argumentative speech, you'll probably use topical order or logical reasons. So organize it by topics or by reasons that someone should believe what you're saying. If you're giving a narrative speech, you're going to be using chronological or narrative order, which are two words for the same thing. So some types of organizational patterns are time and sequential, so that arranges items by time or by steps. That's especially common in narrative speeches and in demonstrative speeches. Narrative arranges information through a series of stories. These are very similar because often narrative is arranged by time, but the difference is sequential has to do with steps, or well, it has to do with steps, and narrative has to do with points in a story. Topical arranges main points to develop a logical relationship between subpoints, so it arranges it by topic. And logical reasons provides a list of reasons that the audience should accept the thesis. Then you'll write your thesis statement. So in a speech, a thesis statement is comprised of 2 points, the specific goal statement and the main reasons that you selected when you chose your main points. So going back to the example with Bengal cats, the thesis statement might be, you should not ban Bengal cats from this community because most Bengals are too far removed from wild blood to be considered a hybrid. Many local and state legislative bodies have excluded them from rules pertaining to hybrids. And in fact, these cats can make wonderful family members. So you can see that this is a combination of my goal statement. I want to convince them not to ban Bengal cats from the community, and then the main points that I included a couple slides ago. The Bengals are not really wild anymore, changing legislation, and anecdotal evidence. We're going to stop here on this one, and then we'll come back and start with outlining the body when I return for the next part of this presentation. I'll see you in a few minutes.